Joey, I should introduce myself. So I'm Joey, I'm one of the senior student group coordinators. That means I work for the Students' Union to support student societies. So I support societies with things from risk assessments, re-registering, handling finances, all sorts of queries. I'm there to support you with all of that, and also to help you do your elections. So we'll talk about elections today. If you've got any questions, there will be time for questions at the end. But if you do want to stick your hand up mid-session to ask a question, I'm absolutely happy for you to do that as well. Alright, let's jump right in. So actually, we'll talk in the session today about why should you hold elections, when should you hold your elections, and how do you hold your elections. So, starting with why hold your elections. Now when I was thinking about this, I could think of lots of different reasons, but the one main thing it always comes back to is representation. Why you should hold your elections is because the committee of your society should reflect what your society members want from your society, and your society members have the right to choose who they want to lead your group. I mean, on the other hand, the other main reason would be because it's a requirement. It says in the society bylaws that all society committees must be elected. So that would be another reason to do it, you know, because you have to. But why I think it's important is because of representation and making sure that your committee reflects the wants and needs of your members. And I know it can sometimes be really, really tempting for committees to say, actually, I know my members really well, and I should choose who's on the next committee because I know this really capable person and they should actually be the next chair, because if this other person is going to be the chair, it's all going to go to shit. You know, that is a quite common thinking, and I can understand that, because if you've poured your heart and soul into a society, you want that society to keep running well over the coming years, and obviously you want it to be run by someone who's capable and who's passionate about the society. And that makes total sense, and that's why you might want to choose the next committee. But at the end of the day, that decision isn't for you as the committee to make, that is for your members to make. It's for your members to choose who they think is capable, because they also know each other, and they can review the candidate manifestos. So it's really, really important for your members to have that choice and to have that voice to be able to choose who they want to be on the committee. So now we've talked about why to hold elections, let's talk about when. I've made a bit of a timeline of second semester, and I think maybe we should work backwards, because realistically at the end of June, that is when the 2024, oh no, wait, that's incorrect. This is, oh no, well, that's when the next committee takes over, is at the end of June. So you have to hold your elections sometime before the end of June. Make sense? Yeah, cool. So, throughout May and early June, you've got deadlines, exams, so that's not really a good time for you to hold your elections, and we wouldn't ask you to hold them then, because we know you're really, really busy with other things, and doing a society election probably isn't your first priority during that time, and obviously it doesn't have to be, because you're here to study and we want you to be able to have that time for your exams. And then right before the exams and deadlines, we're doing the handover and re-registration forms for societies, because those we have to factor in, because obviously they have to come after your elections, so we need to make sure to factor time into those. Now you might ask, okay, why don't we do re-registrations and handovers in late June and July to give you more time, right? That will be really nice, except the problem we have is that at the end of deadline and exam season, all graduating student accounts get expired by the university, and they lose access to SUMS, and they lose access to Expense 365, which is where you handle your society finance. In short, at the end of deadline and exam season, any graduating committee members lose access to stuff, so we need to make sure at that point that you've already handed over any relevant things to the new committee, which is why we try to make sure we do handover and re-registration before then. That's why it all looks quite early, but that's the reasoning behind it. So your elections then, in line with that, actually happen in February and early March, which I know sort of sounds really, really early, but it's for that reason, it's because of this timeline. We do sometimes get societies that do their elections at a different point in the year, and that's fine. A lot of the time it's also related to some really specific courses that have like different course dates and stuff. But in general, that is when we will be setting up society elections, and then that's when we would encourage all of you to hold your elections. just to be in line with that timeline. So elections might seem really, really far away now, but actually they are just around the corner in February, which is only a few months away. So it's worth thinking about them now and factoring them into your planning for the year. Oh yeah, I put a little democracy broccoli, and that's just going to be up here, mostly for my own entertainment. Cool. So then, how to hold your elections? There are really only a few very simple requirements that your election has to fulfill, and we've got more guidance later on around more specific things you can do to make sure you meet those requirements. But essentially, what it comes down to with society elections, what you need to make sure you do is make sure all society members can nominate themselves in your elections, all society members can vote in your election, and that the vote is held by a secret ballot. Because that's really all it is you have to make sure that all of your society members have the opportunity to take part in your election if they want to. Just a caveat, this only applies to members of your society who are current students at the University of Manchester. Yes?
I think a problem that I see a few societies face is with like free memberships.
Yeah.
During elections, someone like signing up for free membership, putting themselves forward to the election, and then getting loads of their friends to just quickly sign up and vote for them, which is like an issue that I see a few people face. So they haven't even like been part of the society leading up to the elections. They just done it to get on the standby or things like that. Is there a way that like, what's your best advice for avoiding that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a really good question, and it's something that I always think is really frustrating to see, obviously, for societies, because that's not how elections are meant to run. That's not what we want to happen. I would say two main solutions you can look at. A would be charge a membership fee. I would always recommend this anyway, because it helps your society to build up at least a small budget to be able to run events. On the other hand, I do know that many societies want to make sure that they run for free to be able to be more accessible to their members. So the other thing you could do is you could temporarily close your membership during voting. That's something you can do. You can just email us, we can close your membership and then reopen it after you're done with your voting. I'm going to get onto this later on some more, but if you run your elections via the SU website, that actually has an automatic feature that means anyone who joins your society after voting opens won't be able to vote. So if you just run your elections via the SU website, that solves that problem, unless the person gets their friends to join before voting opens, if they're very organised. But if they're very organised, that's a good sign. Hello.
For some sports car committee positions, it might involve a bit of background expertise. For example, maybe there will be a training committee, training secretary who is in charge of all the training events of the sport that requires delicate skills. In that case, is it possible to restrict the people who can nominate themselves?
Yes, so in general, all of your positions that you're electing for should be open for any of your members to stand for. But we do know that with things like really specialised positions, for example, sport or dance instructors, they might have to have specific qualifications. So then that is something that you can implement and say this position has to hold that qualification. But that should only be for those specific skilled positions. Yeah?
Was it a secret ballot? Is it a secret for the voters? Is it secret for the people you voted for?
The secret as in the people voting get to have an anonymous vote, but they can see the names of the people they're voting for, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so other people you're voting for, is their names hidden in that case?
No, so you could do that. You can absolutely if you want to, but you don't have to. With most society elections, names and faces are visible so that people know who they're voting for, which I think makes sense because obviously, again, you know your society members and you all know each other within the society, so you might know who could be good for the position. And it'd be in a general election, you know who's standing for mayor and you know who's running to be in parliament, and their names and faces aren't hidden in that election. Yeah?
Sorry, this was for the previous slide regarding the timeline.
Yeah.
Our society is a joint society between UM and NMU, so then NMU has a different election time, it's held later in the time. It worked this year, but so if we want to know the specific requirements for the specific timeline for that, do we speak to you then? So to like understand so that we don't lose access to SUMS or.
That's fine. Yeah. Is this for architecture?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we can talk about it separately some more, but we can look at when MMU do their elections, and we can figure out the best timeline for you guys to be doing it. Just because you're a bit of an issue, like the only case where that is, because I think it's the only joint course. But we can have a chat about it and figure out the MMU timeline and figure it out for you. Yeah. Another question, right?
When we mean secret ballot, do you mean that you have to hide the vote numbers? Or are you allowed to publish who gets 9 votes, who gets 8 votes?
You can publish that. A secret ballot is more about making sure that people can vote anonymously. So say I'm standing in an election and you're all voting, and I'm standing alongside, I don't know, my friend Jack, who's definitely right here. I shouldn't know whether you voted for me or for Jack. That's what the secret ballot is about, so that I don't know whether you voted for me or for someone else.
Thank you.
Cool. Oh, more questions. Great.
Yeah, in terms of associate members are members who go to like MMU and things like that. How would it work for associate members to vote in the election, or can they?
So only students who are students at UOM are eligible to stand and vote in your elections. So if they're an associate member, unfortunately, they wouldn't be eligible to stand or vote. Any other questions? Cool. I mean, I've got some more slides as well. I'll talk some more. We can always get back to more questions. But yeah, great. So let's talk about communication. How should you talk to your members about your elections? I would say to make sure that you fulfill the requirement that all of your members are invited to take part, send an email via the Society's website to all, the Students' Union website to all of your members. That way, you've already got, if you send them just one email before nominations open, telling them all the details of the election, that way you've already fulfilled that requirement of giving every member the opportunity to take part. Now, additionally to that, I would also encourage you to publish the election on any other channels you use, be that, social media, group chats, Discord servers, whatever you use, publish it there, tell your members, shout about your election and encourage them to get involved. And also have direct conversations. Ask your society members, are you thinking of running? Do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns about running? Do you want to talk about the role you might want to run for? Talk to them about why you think they might be good for different roles, and encourage them to really get involved and put themselves forward for roles that you've got in the election, because it's really, really beneficial for societies to have that election engagement with their members, because it really shows how engaged your members are and how much they care about your society running for years to come. So, what should you actually tell them in that email you send them, or in any social media communications? Contact them at least 2 weeks prior to nominations opening, ideally. Give them lots of time to think about whether they want to run. To give them time to write a manifesto, think about which roles they might want to run for. Then email them again when nominations open, and tell them, nominations are open, here's the link. Make sure you tell them, Make sure you tell them the deadline of when nominations will close, so that they can make sure to get their nomination in time if they are thinking about running. And then again, contact them when voting opens. I know it's a bit of a hassle to keep emailing them, but you've got to really, push it a little bit and make sure that you keep telling them about it so that they're aware it's happening. Again, when voting opens, send them the voting form and tell them until when they've got to vote, so that they know the deadline. This is all obviously for online elections. You can also do in-person elections, but I'll get onto that a bit later. But even if you're doing in-person elections, the same thing still applies. Make sure you contact them, tell them when and how to nominate, and tell them when and where they'll be able to vote, which would be in person if you're doing it in person. Oh, I've already talked about all of that, haven't I? I forgot I had a separate slide with Fun Broccoli on it. How to get. Oh yeah, also, if you're contacting them, tell them who to take in contact with questions. Do they just contact the president? Is there a separate elections officer? Who can they talk to about it? You might even want to do like a forum kind of thing, where you say, we're going to do, in this next society meeting or next social, we're going to have half an hour at the end where the committee is just going to be available for questions for anyone who wants to talk about running in the election, who's interested, to ask any questions, to have a chat, and just give them that space to talk about it and ask questions. Cool. Which positions should you elect for? The short answer is all of them. Whichever positions you have, all of them should be elected. Now, the 3 mandatory positions we've got at the SU are chair or president, treasurer, and inclusion officer. But obviously, lots of societies have more roles than that, so any other positions you've got, again, put them up for election once a year and let students run for them. Now, there are 3 ways you can do your election. You can do them at your AGM, which is your annual general meeting. So that will be the meeting where you invite all of your members to come. So that's not just the committee, that's all of your society members can attend that meeting. Normally at an AGM, there's an update from the chair on how the year's gone, an update from the treasurer on where the society's finances are at, and then the election for the new committee. You can also run your elections via Microsoft Forms, or via Sums, which is our SU website. I'll talk about all 3 of these in a bit more depth now. So, for the AGM, you notify your members in the way we've already talked about via email, via social media, let them know it's happening. Normally the way it would work is you would send out a Microsoft form beforehand where people can nominate themselves and submit their manifestos. And then the actual voting would take place at the AGM via a secret ballot. So what you can do, for example, is literally just hand out paper slips with the names of the nominees printed on them to everyone at the AGM. They all make like a physical cross, like you would, you know, when you go to vote, you make your cross on a physical ballot paper. And then they hand that to you, your elections officer counts out the votes, and then you have your winners. On any ballots with any of these election methods, make sure that there's an option for RON. RON stands for reopen nominations, so that should be for each committee role that is available, there should be a RON option. If RON gets elected for any of the roles, you'll have to reopen nominations, wait again for nominations to come in, and then do another round of voting.
When you say reopen,
Yeah.
are you waiting a certain amount of time, or is it a day for another meeting? How long do you give people to...
We don't have a specified time that we require you to do it for. I would say it really depends on the size of the society, because if you've got like 10 members, you'd probably be fine with like a day or 2, whereas if you've got 200 members, you want to give them at least a week, I'd say.
It wouldn't be the same time.
No, you'd do it in a separate event normally, unless it's, you know, sometimes again if it's a really small society with like 10 people, then you might be able to do it at the same meeting if there are other people who are willing to run for that position. Although it seems a bit unlikely that it would happen in a society with just 10 members, because they're normally quite close-knit friend groups. So if Ron gets elected, something's probably gone quite wrong. So maybe it's worth stepping away and having a conversation about it and then reconvening. Make sense?
Yep, I do.
Cool. Any other questions on that? On AGMs? Go for it.
Is the limit for Ron? Like how many tenure you can have?
Unlimited. Ron is the only one who can have all the positions. Cool. So we've got a Microsoft form then. We have templates linked on our website for both nomination forms and voting forms as Microsoft forms. So if you want to go down that route with your elections, you can just download the templates, or well, not download them, you can copy the templates, you can amend them to suit your needs, and then publish them to your members. So something else that you should have for if you do your elections via AGM or Microsoft Forms will be an elections officer. So that will be a designated person who is in charge of running the election. This should be someone who is not running in the election themselves. So ideally, that will be someone from your current committee who's doing it. If all of your current committee are rerunning, it could also just be any society member who's willing to do it, as long as they're not running themselves. The elections officer would be sort of responsible for making sure all the communications are sent out, and they would also be the one to set up the form or to count out the votes at the end. It's just important to make sure that this is someone who's not running in the election, to make sure you've got sort of that impartiality, and that that person doesn't have any personal interest in who wins. So yeah, on the form, again, you should have Ron, you should have all the candidates on there, and then you just count out the votes at the end, and make sure you keep a record of this. I think I've got something on that later on as well. And then the last way to hold your election would be via Sums, which is our website. what you would do for that is submit. It says submit the form. What I mean by that is submit the form that we send you. So we're going to send out later, towards the end of semester 1, a form where we're going to ask you how do you want to hold your elections. And if you say that you want to hold them via sums, we'll just ask you for the information that you want to go into that election. So that will be which roles are you electing for, and do you have any other sort of requirements, and then tell your members, and we will do the rest. So we will then set up, we'll set up the election on our website for you, and we've got a timeline for this, so we will send you the timeline and you just forward that to your members, and they will be able to nominate themselves on our website, vote on our website, and we will then send you the results once it's all done. That has the benefit that you're not at risk of people questioning your election afterwards or complaining about it, because sometimes what happens with Microsoft Forms, for example, is students who ran in the election and maybe lost will then turn around and be like, I don't think that's valid. I think your elections officer actually, they skewed the votes, they didn't count properly, stuff like that. Whereas if you do it via our website, you don't really have the risk of that, and we're able to double check on our end any results. Sorry, was there a question here?
So if we did elections on sums, would it not require a specific elections officer?
No, it wouldn't, because just the chair, for example, or anyone could just submit to us which roles you want to set up, and then we kind of take on that role of elections officer. We will set up the election for you, and we'll count the votes and send you the results. And when I say count the votes, the website does it automatically and just tells us the results, so it's pretty easy. Cool. Just some other bits. This is definitely not going to take an hour, so good news for anyone who's hoping to dash off to the Sums 101 after this. Just one thing that's really important to bear in mind is record keeping. So it's really, really important for you to keep a good record of your elections. If you're doing an AGM, that would just be meeting minutes from that AGM. If you're doing it via Microsoft Forms, make sure you save a copy of that form and the original spreadsheet. So save them somewhere safe, ideally somewhere where the future committee is going to have access to them in an anonymized version. Because if there's any complaint about your elections afterwards, or any students questioning whether it was done properly or in a valid way, we will ask you for that record of your election, and we will ask to see it, and if you can't provide a record, you will have to rerun the election. So make sure you keep a good record. What if you only have one candidate per position? What do then? So you'll still have to run an election and just put that candidate as one option and Ron as the other option, the open nominations. And I know it can sometimes feel a bit annoying to have to elect, especially if you're a small society and you've only got one candidate per position and you basically already know who the committee is going to be. So what's the point in doing an election? It's really important to just do a vote anyway and to give your members that option. And that doesn't have to be really complicated. It can be really easy. Just send the form to your members, let them vote. It's not a big deal in most cases for small societies, but make sure you do that vote anyway, even if there is only one nominee per position. I think that's everything I've got. Do you have any other questions? Cool. If anyone does have further questions down the line, you can email us at societies.su@manchester.ac.uk. You can come see us in the Students' Union. Our office is on the first floor, so please come into the activities office and speak to us. I've also got here, if you scan the QR code, there's more information there on how to run your elections. That's where the template forms are linked. It's all on our website. And then on the last slide, I've just got the registration link. Make sure you register your attendance. Thank you everyone for coming, and please do speak to us about your elections. If you've got any questions, we are there to help. We'll talk you through it, we'll find a solution. So yeah, thanks so much for coming, enjoy it then.